Hi, it's Michelle the Irritable Vegan, and today I'd like to share with you my 3 go-to protein recipes. I like to prep these and have them on hand through the week so I can just pick and choose my protein elements for each meal. I hope you enjoy them. Let's get into it. So first up is a chickpea mash, and my secret ingredient here is black salt. It helps to give a really sulphurous, eggy flavour, and it's a fantastic alternative to egg mayonnaise. So for this we need a full tin of chickpeas which have been really well rinsed and drained. I like to pop them into a pestle and mortar. You can also do this in a blender, but you would get a much softer, creamier result. I like to have a little bit of texture left in mine, so I prefer to do it by hand. So once it's mashed to this, I add a 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida, a 1/4 teaspoon of black salt, that's not optional, some fresh ground pepper to taste, a 1/4 teaspoon of dried dill, and 2 teaspoons of nutritional yeast. Mash that in. It's quite dry at this stage. We will be adding in some liquid to loosen it up a little bit. So once that's mixed as well as you can, I add a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, a teaspoon of raw apple cider vinegar, and a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of virgin olive oil. Mix that all together so it forms a nice paste. I like mine to be almost like a pate, but I do like a few little chunks of chickpeas in there. And it's fantastic on oat cakes, rice cakes, and in sandwiches. So next up is some crispy tofu bacon, and my favourite way to press tofu is to use a steamer pan. So into the top steamer I'll pop the tofu, and on top of that I put a little bit of kitchen towel, and then I use my trusty mortar, which is really heavy. It's made of solid granite. That really helps weigh down and press the tofu. And just for a little bit of extra weight, I'll pop the pestle in the top. So you can see that any water left in the tofu presses through the steamer basket into the pan at the bottom. Then after about half an hour, the tofu should be well pressed. I remove that from the steamer and slice into thin, even slices. The more even you can get them, the better, because it means they'll all cook at the same rate. These are about 1/2 centimetre thick. And then just to be extra sure that I'm getting rid of all those oligos, I then press each individual piece of tofu in a few sheets of kitchen paper, just pressing it and rolling as I go. Not only does this help to make sure that you get all those nasty oligos out, and it reduces the chance of having any kind of reaction to the tofu, but it also produces a much crispier, firmer bacon slice once it's cooked. So once all the tofu slices have been nicely pressed, into a shallow, deep Tupperware, I'll then put 1 tablespoon of toasted sesame oil, 1 tablespoon of soya sauce or wheat-free tamari, whichever you prefer, half a teaspoon of liquid smoke, half a teaspoon of miso paste, and half a teaspoon of maple syrup. Give that a really good stir. So you need to make sure your Tupperware is large enough to take each individual slice of tofu without them overlapping so that they can get really well marinated. And I marinate mine overnight in the fridge for about 24 hours, turning every so often so that the marinade gets really nicely soaked into each individual slice. And every so often when I pop into the kitchen for a cup of tea, I'll remove the Tupperware from the fridge and just give it a really nice gentle shake around just to get that marinade into every little crack and crevice of the tofu. So after 24 hours you can fry these on medium heat in a non-stick pan, 5 minutes each side, until they're lovely and golden brown. Alternatively, you can bake them in the oven 200 degrees Celsius for about 10 minutes per side, and avoid the temptation to overcook them because they do get crispier as they cool. So this was my delicious BLT. The bacon is salty, sweet, crispy, absolutely delicious. And last but not least, my delicious faked beans. So for these you'll need about half a cup, 90 grams of chana dal, and even before I set these to soak, I make sure I give them a really thorough rinse in some nice clean fresh water. Once they're all nicely rinsed, I pop them in a bowl to soak. You can leave them for anywhere between 1 hour up to 24 hours. And I change the water several times during the soaking, and then they need to be boiled rapidly for at least 10 minutes. At the end of the 10 minutes, I then skim off any of the scum that's risen to the surface, and then reduce the temperature and continue to simmer for about 20 minutes. Once they're cooked, I give them another thorough rinse with some fresh boiling water straight from the kettle, just as an extra step to rinse off any oligos that have leached out into the cooking water. And then when they're nicely drained, I pop them back into the pan. Add in half a tin of tomatoes. And now it's time to get some flavour in there. So half a teaspoon of tomato puree, half a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, give that a good stir, 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida, and 1/4 teaspoon of garam masala, and a tablespoon of nutritional yeast. I let that simmer away for 15 to 20 minutes, and then add in salt just to taste right at the end. Some alternatives you could add would include barbecue sauce and curry powder. Once that's done, I pop it in a Kilner jar, and this will easily last between 3 to 5 days in the fridge, so you've got them on hand whenever you need them. They're great for topping on jacket potatoes, for having with a vegan breakfast, or having on some gluten-free toast. Delicious. I really hope you enjoy them as much as I do. Thanks for watching.